Hi, everyone. In this video, we are going to go over the relationship between information systems and organizations strategy. So to do that, let's first start by defining what an organization is. So an organization has two definitions. So there's the technical definition and there is also the behavioral definition. So in the technical definition, we can think about an organization as an entity that has inputs from the environment, and those inputs includes, let's say, raw materials, uh, factors of production like labor, capital, and also information technology. And those inputs are transformed by the organization through the production process into outputs that are sent to the environment. And this also goes through a loop. The same thing, the behavioral definition of an organization consists of environmental resources. So those resources can be in terms of human resources, which is labor, in terms of information technology resources, financial resources, and so on. Or raw materials resources, and all of those resources they go through the formal organization and transformed into environmental outputs, which is the products or services that as an organization we produce. So some features of the organization, the use of hierarchical structure. So we need to have hierarchical structure in which we have frontline employees, we have supervisors level, and then we have middle managers, and then we have top management. So the idea of hierarchical structure is to have accountability for performing the work with efficiency, right? And again, another principle is adherence to efficiency as an organization. Efficiency meaning that we need to perform tasks or business processes with the least waste, the least cost that is possible in order to improve our bottom line as an organization. And then another feature is the routines and business processes. So you can think about a routine, if I go, for example, for an admission business process, right? Or for a graduation application process, that one of the routine or parts of that business process is my signature. So it is one part of the business process. We call it routine. So those routines, we do them so often as frontline employees or managers to the point where it becomes so efficient. That routine we do becomes so efficient with repetition. So, and then we will talk about each one of those in a little bit, especially the routine and business processes. So you can think about a business process as a collection of routines, those little tasks within the business process. Remember last week we talked about the sales business process where we have 3 functional units or functional areas involved in that business process. So for example, we had one business process, which is the sales through the sales functional area. And then it moves on to the accounting where they verify the credit of the customer that's in the accounting functional area. So the verification of credit, that is one of the routines, right? It is part of a business process, but it's called a routine, right? And then we move on to the operational production functional area where they produce and ship that product. So those are each one of those activities called a routine. Right? The more we do those routines, the more efficient we are at them. And then again, those collection of routines are business process, and a firm is basically a collection of business processes. So organizational politics. So when we see organizational politics or politics, we automatically think about Republican Democrats, but what it really means, what it refers to, organizational politics refers to the influence on the allocation of resources. So we want to make sure that we allocate resources efficiently. For example, if we want to invest in an information technology that would help us produce some of those business processes more efficiently, we need to have that political power, right, within the organization to influence the opinion to invest in this technology because it's going to make our business processes more efficient. So it's not about self-interest, but it is more about what is best for the organization and the allocation of resources. So organizational culture, you can think about culture as the norms that are in that organization, just kind of in a nutshell, right? Some organizations, they have this futuristic culture. Some, they are very open to change. Some organizations, they are resistant to change. Some organizations, they are very collaborative. There's collaboration among their employees, so they get things done. Some, they are very competitive among their employees. So it depends on what that culture is, and there are so many different ways that you can talk about culture within the organization. There are some also cultures within the unit or department that you work at as well. So when we talk about the environment and the organization, we can see that the environment, we have external environment, internal environment. So some examples of the external environment to our organization includes the governments, the competitors, customers, financial institutions, and the internal environment includes the organizational culture, the knowledge, technology that we have within the organization. So there are some disruptive technologies that can affect our organization. So for example, those new technologies can substitute products that we are creating, right? So for example, Kodak as a company, there were some disruptive technologies that were introduced that made Kodak as a company obsolete or diminish from existence, right? So for example, smartphones. Now everyone is using their smartphones for taking photos and making videos. So Kodak as a film camera company is gone. We don't need it anymore. So those are the disruptive technologies and personal computers. And we talked about how personal computers were introduced as a result of a vision by Steve Jobs, who introduced the first Mac for personal use. And then later on, as a competition by IBM and other Microsoft, they introduced personal computers in the PC version and the Apple version as we see it today later on, right? So first movers versus fast followers. So as a first mover, when you are a company that introduces technology as a first mover, you need to utilize that as fast as possible and benefit, optimize your profit as fast as possible before your competitors follow along and jump into that wagon of your invention, right? And then those fast followers, for example, the iPhone was the first mover in that smartphone with the touch smartphones, right? And then we have Samsung, and we have some other types, the Google phone, also Microsoft had their own types of phone. And again, those are fast followers, and they captured kind of that invention that started with iPhone, but they capitalized on that technology. And now iPhone was able to differentiate itself from other competitors. But those are some of the effects of disruptive technologies. And then the economic impact. So let's look at each one of those. Economic impacts is IT changes, relative cost of capital, and cost of information. So the economic impact of information technology enables companies to outsource some of their business processes, which can be cheaper and much easier for organizations using information technology. So for example, I used to work for H&R Block company, which is as we all know, filing tax and so on. It's a financial institution. So as an organization, they had a call center, and in that call center, they hired or they outsourced, they hired another company so they hired that company that actually is in charge of hiring customer service employees and technical support employees. And they hire them as a seasonal employees so they can avoid cost. Instead of running that call center themselves, they hired another workforce company to run it for them so they can hire seasonal employees, because the seasonal employees, you don't pay them as a company any benefits and all of that, as long as they work, I believe, 9 or 10 months and instead of 12 months. So they are saving costs in that way. So outsourcing, because they have advantage in terms of technology in that call center, they have access to all technologies that HR Block actually uses for their operations. So they reduce their transaction costs by using this the outsourcing. So then we have transaction cost theory. So what we mean here by transaction cost theory is that when we have transactions, we have costs, and we want to minimize those costs. So one way to minimize these costs, especially if you are, let's say that you are a retailer, let's say that you are a gas station company, you have gas stations. So you have transaction costs when you buy your supplies in terms of gas, for example. You need to buy it from a company that, sells it from the refinery, right? So those refineries, for example, they have premium on markup on what, when they sell it to you. And then the refinery buys its gas or crude oil, for example, from those who own those wells of oil, right? So then the refinery makes markup on the crude oil that they bought from the wells owners, right? So there is always a markup until it gets to you as a retailer, and that's a transaction cost. So one way to economize or reduce those transaction costs is to do something we call vertical integration. So I give an example as the Love's gas stations that we see everywhere when we travel. Even here in the Valley, we have Love's gas station. So a gas station is a retailer, right? And they get their gas from a refinery, and that refinery buys the gas from crude oil wells owners, right? So as a vertical integration, or to achieve vertical integration, you are a retailer, you own in the supply chain, the second level, which is the refinery, and you also own the well itself. So you own all those 3 levels. So you control and you reduce your transaction costs that you could have paid somebody else. Now you are running all of those, and this is what we call it vertical integration. Another example is when McDonald's bought some potato farms in Idaho. So for example, the French fries that we buy from McDonald's, those potatoes are produced by McDonald's owns the farms that produce those potatoes. So we call this vertical integration. You get it from the bottom all the way through the whole supply chain value, supply chain. You own that supply chain. So agency theory, when we think about agency, it refers to an owner who hires employees. And those employees, they are agents. In other words, they work and they perform activities on behalf of the owner of the business. So we call that agency theory. So those agents or employees, they are costly because they require wages, and they also require supervising. So you need to hire supervisors, managers to supervise those employees so they can add value and perform on your behalf as an owner with efficiencies, right? So this is what we call it agency costs. So if with technology, we can reduce this agency cost because it reduces what we call it, because IT flattens that organizational structure. So IT flattens the organizations because it empowers frontline employees. So then there is less need for higher levels of management or supervision. So this is what we mean here by flattening organizations is when we have the traditional hierarchical organization here consists of at least 5 levels of, so the first level, the bottom level, that's the frontline employees, and then supervisors, the second line, and then we have middle managers, top managers, and then the CEO. So those are all levels of decision making. And so the frontline employees, if they want to make a decision, they need to get approval from all those higher levels in the structure. So it takes time, it is very costly because you need to pay all of those managers high big bucks, right? So now with IT, you are able as an organization to flatten those organizational structure. So you have frontline, middle managers, and you have the CEO. So now the decisions in IT empowers through business intelligence systems, for example, empowers frontline employees to make decisions fast without delay. And also you reduce costs. You don't have to pay more managers when you have this flatter organizational structure. So the internet helps organizations actually reduce costs and transaction costs and also agency costs because you can utilize actually information technology or the internet, for example, instead of printing all the policies and procedures for business, then you can use the internet to distribute those for free with zero cost here, just as an example. So this chapter talks about Porter's competitive forces model, or Michael Porter is a professor at Harvard, and he came up with this competitive forces model. And so the question that we need to ask as an organization is, or we need to ask ourselves as business students, is why do some firms become leaders in their industry? Why do they become really good and on the top in their industry? So the answer to that is why some firms become leaders in their industry is because they have a competitive advantage. They have a competitive edge, right? So they have a competitive advantage, or an organization or a firm can have a competitive advantage if it owns resources or it has resources that other competitors or others don't have. So that's one thing, right? Second is, and a firm can have a competitive advantage if it has the same resources like other firms or other competitors have, but it utilizes those resources more efficiently than its competitors. So this is what makes an organization have a competitive advantage, is if it has resources that others don't have, or it has the same resources others have, but it uses them more efficiently than others, right? So then the 5 competitive forces that shape the fate of a firm includes traditional competitors. So we talked about an example of Walmart. So who is a very strong competitor of Walmart in this case that might take over that competitive advantage Walmart has is Target, right? So both of them, they are head to head, and that might affect their competitive advantage of Walmart is when we have Target. And then new market entrants. What is the barrier to entry? Is it very high barrier to entry to enter into, for example, the retail business? Might not, right? So there are some businesses that have high barrier to entry, such as the microchip or the microprocessor companies. It takes years to build a plant and to get into that market, right? And so there are some industries or markets that, especially here in the Valley, for example, car wash businesses, you see them in every corner because there is very low barrier to entry. It's very easy to do a car wash business. So everybody is doing it because it's cheaper and it can be done faster. And then substitute products. So another factor or force that impacts the competitiveness of an organization is the availability of substitute products and services. Customers and suppliers. Let's look at each one of those in a little bit more detail. So new market entrance. Example for new companies, for example, can enter into a market with new equipment, younger workers, but they might have very little brand recognition. And that's why a lot of brands fail or that's why we see a lot of commercials or advertising about companies because they want to imprint their image or their brand in your image, in your brain. So when you see them, then you can recognize them right away. When you are in the market making choices, you can say, oh yeah, I'm familiar with this, so I'm going to take this because I have heard about this product, right? So that's what we mean here. But if there is a new product, then you might actually try to avoid that product because you are not familiar with it. So that's kind of one thing about new market entrance. Substitute products and services. So for example, here, if there is a product, iTunes, for example, was substituting CDs. So there are some products and services that can substitute what you have. Customers. So we need to have that, make it very hard for customers, or not hard, but costly for customers to switch from our product. And we can do that by maybe creating loyalty programs, right? Give them points if they buy more from us. So that way we can keep them as loyal customers and don't switch to other competitors. And suppliers also, when we have intimate relationships with suppliers, then by giving them access to our systems, to our inventory, then we bargain, we have bargaining power over our suppliers, then we can negotiate the price. So for example, there is the economy of scale. So if you buy more products from that supplier, then they can reduce the price for you, for example. So how do we deal with competitive forces using information systems? So we have those 4 generic strategies. Includes low-cost leadership. So for example, we say Walmart, it has this low-cost leadership in the retail business because they utilize information technology for their supply chain, for their logistics, right? They utilize the system that they are so good at, and that makes them able to transfer that saving that they have saved from their transactions and actually give that saving to the customer. And then we have product differentiation. This is, you can be competitive if you can differentiate your product from your other competitors. So for example, here, Target differentiates itself from Walmart because they have high quality products, they have greater customer service. When you go to the store, you have a different experience. You are in a luxury, you feel like you're in a luxury place, right? Very clean, their cars are clean, and so on, right? And even if you pay a little bit more, but you get better quality products. So that's what we mean by differentiation. Some hotels, they have this, they differentiate themselves by having better customer service. So for example, the Hiltons, they provide higher customer service to their employees. They see their preferences and they meet the preferences of their customers and their guests. Focus on a market niche or niche. So a market niche is, this is when you provide a product to that is serving minorities, for example, or you specialize in one thing that you are really good at. So for example, if you are a business serving, providing only kosher meat or halal meat, You know, you are serving certain groups. In this case, kosher is for the Jewish people, meats for the Jewish people, halal, that is meat for the Muslim people, right? Those are, you know, they are slaughtered or prepared in a certain way for those certain groups. Another example for our niche market is organic products, like for example, Sprout. They provide only organic products, so they are a niche market. There are some other examples of niche. So niche markets, for example, we were mentioning in class that the cupping, right? That's where the cups they put them on the athletes use it a lot. So that's a niche market, right? Someone, and I was talking to the class as well, is that we are here in the valley or in the island. One thing that we are missing is helicopter rides. For me, when I go to Dallas through San Marcos, there is always a helicopter ride in San Marcos where they advertise $20 per ride, right? I always take my 3-year-old son there, and he loves it. He goes up in the using the helicopter, and he brings his helicopter toy with him, and you know, and it's only $20. And here, I believe if we have that, and that will be a niche market because you are serving families or kids, right? With this service and product. Strengthening customer and supplier intimacy. So we already talked about that. So we already talked about that. So smart products and Internet of Things. So Internet of Things and smart products can add competitive advantage to your firm, because when you invest in those technologies, it can give you a competitive edge over your competitors if they don't have it yet, right? So Internet of Things, what we mean by that is any products that has sensors to it, connected to it. So for example, my garage at home has sensors, so I can open it and close it while I am here at work, right? Because it's connected to the internet and it has sensors to it. In the cars, you can see your tires, pressure using sensors. So that's what we mean by the Internet of Things. Smart products like fitness equipment, health trackers, Apple Watch, Alexa. You know, you're just gonna have to name some few products. So you can differentiate your products by having embedding those Internet of Things, smart products into your product. And this investment will raise switching costs to your customers. So they are going to be more loyal to you. And it will inhibit also new entrants into the market and may decrease the power of suppliers as well. So the value chain model. Before we go there, so let me go into strengthening customer and supplier intimacy. So increasing the switching costs. So I give in class an example of myself. So in 2020, I went to Lexus dealership here, and they had zero interest for cars. So I bought a car there, and it was a great deal. Zero interest for 60 months. I can't ask for more. So then I had an accident. Somebody, one teenager or two teenagers, one lady, she was driving with her boyfriend, Chevy 1994, I believe, or 96 truck, pickup truck. And they were on the phone, and the traffic light was red for them, but it was green for me. So I was passing by, and then they came and hit me in the side. My car was totaled, and their car didn't have much, actually a small dent. And then during that accident, what happened is all of the airbags fell down to protect me from the effect of that hit. And then because of technology, this lady was talking to me, telling me that she already answered, which is the technology that is provided here next to the driver seat. So she asked me if I am okay, because she already called the police to come to the location of the accident, and she asked me if I need an ambulance to take me to the emergency room. I told her I was okay, and also the glass of my window fell down as one piece, so it didn't scatter all over, and the car didn't flip because it is heavy. Um, so I was so, impressed by the quality of the car. And also, after I lost my car, then I got reimbursed by my insurance company, and I was trying to shop for another car. So I went to other luxury cars like Audi, uh, BMW, and Mercedes, and all other, and Volvo, and so on. But I was not convinced. Those impressions that I got during the accidents made it very hard for me to switch. So it made the switching cost for me to move to another brand very high, because what I was by that reliability and the impression I got from that car. So this is what we mean here by strengthening customer intimacy. When you build a product that is quality product, then you are going to keep that customer from going anywhere else. So another thing that we want to focus on is that the value chain model. So from its name, there is added value, and it is a chain. Starts from, and it keeps going until from raw materials all the way to the end user or the customer. So then in the value chain, we have primary activities and we have support activities. So the primary activities involve those activities that are directly related to the production of the product and services, right? And the support activities, they are not directly involved in the production, they are support, right? Supporting. And the support activities includes technology, computer-aided design systems, procurement, computerization, human resource administration, and so on. However, the primary activity starts with the inbound logistics. That's when we have the raw materials, procure those raw materials and store them in a warehouse. And then when we have those raw materials, we can go into the operation, which is the next value chain, producing that product from the raw materials. And then when we have that product is already ready, then we need to go through the sales and marketing. We need to advertise and sell those products. And I mentioned that there are three goals for marketing for any product. There are three goals for marketing. The first one is to inform. So to inform people that you have this product, right? You don't have to explain in details, but just tell them that we have this product called certain thing. So for example, in our case, in the Master of Science in Business Analytics, I say, yes, we have a Master of Science in Business Analytics here at UTRGV. So we inform people. We don't tell them yet what it is. So that's first step. Second step, we educate. So the second step of marketing is educate your audience, your customers. You educate them what analytics or business analytics is all about, right? So that's the second goal of marketing. And the third one is persuade people to buy or use your product, right? So those are some of the steps that are in the value chain. Third step here, at least in this model. And then we have the service chain. This is where we maintain and we repair the product that we just sold. And then the outbound logistics, this is the shipping, when we ship our products. So we also talk about synergies, which means collaboration. What are some other markets or industries that are complementary, or other products that are complementary to our product? So for example, here, YouTube was acquired by Google because it complements what Google does, right? Google, for example, knows about what customers are searching for. If they are interested in buying something, for example, they will search about it on Google. But that's not enough for Google, right? They know now what the customer wants, but how can they monetize that, right? So in order to monetize that, now they are using YouTube to provide the advertising or the commercials for that product that you were searching for. As soon as you watch a video on YouTube, then it pops up that commercial for that product that you were looking for. So this is what we mean by synergies. For example, um, WhatsApp was bought by Facebook because there is a synergy, right? Um, and so when I also mentioned that Oracle bought Cerner, which is an electronic health records company. So Oracle is a larger company, and Cerner already uses their um, the Oracle database management system, so it complements their business. So they wanted to get into the healthcare business, so they acquired that. So this is what we mean by synergies. So core competencies. So what we mean by core competency is what is the thing that we are really good at as a business, right? What are the things that we are well known to be good at as a business? So for example, Walmart, they are well known. One of their core competencies is uh, logistics, their efficient logistics, right? That translates into low costs, right? Um, and then for us as a university, for example, what is the core competency for us as a university is that we provide education, research, community engagement, and healthcare, healthcare as well with low cost. So this is what we are good at, right? In comparison to our competitors, we do provide that in lower cost. So other examples of core competencies, for example, would be Microsoft. Uh, they are good at providing their core competency, for example, will be the productivity office products, right? So network-based strategies, let's look at each one of those. So network economics. So what we mean here by a network is when we have more nodes or entities in that network. So for example, in the phone industry, if more people have phones, and that means the network gets larger, then actually that's more profitable because the more the users, there are users, the more it is beneficial. The same thing for apps. The more there are smartphones, the better business for apps because apps or downloading apps involves almost zero cost. To download that for the customer as well as for the producer of that app or the business, right? So unlike the traditional economics and law of diminishing returns. So for example, in production, if you are producing, let's say that you're in McDonald's and you are trying to produce sandwiches, right? So the more employees you add, the more your production will increase little by little, and that return will be diminishing until you add a certain number of people into McDonald's, for example, as employees, where the more you add, there is no increase in return at all, right? So, for example, you have 10 employees and then you hire 20 employees and it is very crowded, they will not be able to move, then the return or the production will not increase because you have more people, right? At certain, but unlike that traditional economics in IT, for example, if you have apps or phones or or video games, you can download them for free without any cost to either the customer or the producer of that video game, because you can do it online through the internet. So the larger the network, the more economic, the more profitable to the company will be. So virtual companies, this is where like Uber, Grubhub, Airbnb, those are virtual companies where they connect kind of consumers with or producers with consumers or businesses with consumers, right? Or businesses to businesses. like Alibaba, Amazon. So those are virtual companies, right? And then the book gives an example of Li and Fang, which is a company, a third party that connects, for example, brand names, apparel companies with suppliers, right, from more than 40 countries. So challenges that are posed by strategic information systems is sustaining that competitive advantage. So if you are the first one to introduce a new technology like ATM, for example, all Citibank started that. Then all banks had ATM. So then it's not a competitive advantage anymore, right? So you can't sustain that competitive advantage, right? But at least now, if you join, or for example, depositing check through your phone, right? In the past, you had to go to a bank and go wait in the line until to deposit a check. So now you can actually scan it through your bank app and automatically gets deposited for you, right? It started, let's say, with, as an example, maybe Bank of America. Now all banks have that feature. So it's not when other banks have that feature, it's not a competitive advantage that distinguishes them from others, but at least they use it as a survival. Because if you don't have it, then you are losing. You're out of that business. Nobody will be working with you. So that's the key. And I would like to stop here, and I will see you next chapter.